Hello, and welcome to VOW Voices of Wisdom, the show that might not be for everybody, but everybody needs to watch this show. Today we have a very important guest today. He's going to give us an insight on how important it is to have the relationship between the crew and the directors in making a good film. And I probably screwed it up just a tiny bit, Nigel, but the basic is how important is the relationship, how important are relationships in the making of good films?
Everything.
Everything, right, Nigel? Everything,
Absolutely
everything.
Yes.
Nigel, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born? And give us a little quick update of how you got to where you are.
Well, I'm about 24 years old.
You look great for your age,
don't
darling.
I look great?
You look great.
Thank you very much.
Where
was
were you
born in England. Went to school in Bristol. I hated school, hated it. It's one of those upper class English public schools, where you wear a white shirt and blue tie, and it was awful.
Oh, wow.
And I hated it. I hated the whole thing.
Hated it.
But I got interested in the theatre. My sister was doing amateur drama in Bristol at the time, and I managed to get a job at Stratford-on-Avon, the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. It was the Shakespeare Memorial Theatre then. And for 3 years I was a stage manager, and then I decided I didn't want to be in these black holes of rehearsal rooms for so long. And came to this country on a tour and decided to come back to this country. Great. And got myself into film and been recording sound on film for, I don't know, 15 years, and decided I knew more about directing than the directors I was doing sound for.
Do you think that's a gift, or is, because you said you automatically knew that, so is that something you just have?
No.
You had to train for it?
No, I didn't train for it.
I didn't think so.
I've never trained for anything.
I didn't think so.
I'm just one of those people who either does it and immediately, or says, oh, I can't possibly do that.
Oh, okay.
Right, so I decided that I was starting to get upset with myself because I was not directing, and I would become annoying on the set, So I said, well, I better prove to myself that I am actually a director.
Okay. And you won an Academy Award in 1982 for Close Harmony.
It was my first film. It was that film.
It was that film?
Yes.
So what was that like, having your first Academy Award?
First film as an Academy Award?
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it.
You wouldn't recommend it?
No, because I was working as a sound mixer on sets, recording sound, features, and so on. And as soon as I won the Academy Award, I never got hired.
Oh, see, I never thought about that, Nigel.
Nobody wanted me around. An Academy Award-winning producer, director sitting behind them on the set. Wow. One producer making commercials hired me on a regular basis. Wonderful man. And he kept me going for the next 18 months before I could really start to present myself as a director to the world and get jobs. And I still did sound for about another 4 or 5 years before I started saying, okay, I'm a director. And now I'm just figuring out I know how to do it.
And you also were involved with the movie Voices of Sarafina, The Charcoal People, A Stitch for Time.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah, I did my homework. I did my homework.
Yeah, I had to look them up too, because I can't remember.
But the Voices of Sarafina, we talked earlier about that. I thought that was...
it was a production with Lincoln Center, because Sarafina was brought from South Africa during the time of apartheid to perform and make protests against apartheid at the stage at Lincoln Center Theatre. And I was asked to make a film about the cast in New York. And so to go back to relationships, actually, here's a perfect example. I walk onto the stage to meet the cast for the first time with the director of the play, Mbongeni Ngema, and he says to me, I want you to meet the cast. And I'm standing there, and I look down onto the seats of the auditorium, and there's 35 young African faces looking up at me, and I was terrified. They were young people. They were children, and I think the oldest person was like 28, 29, and so talented. I'd seen the show, and I said, good morning, and in one voice back, and it's a chorus, they said, good morning.
Wow.
And I mean, their names were so complicated, you know? And it took me a couple of months of living in the hotel where they were put up to get to know them well enough to be able to say, okay, now we can start shooting.
And that's what you're saying, it's important
Those
to make a good
relationships
movie.
are very, very important. And today, people don't have the money in budgets to spend that kind of time to get to know your subject matter. I mean, you know, there was such a difference between my culture and their culture.
Yes, yes.
And to get somewhere across the bridge towards one another is what I needed to do. And you need to do that with everything, every interview, every person that you talk to, and every crew member. You need to have that special relationship. I mean, for me, casting behind the camera is as important as casting in front of the camera.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I do not need, making a documentary, a sound man walk in to a set and be the big guy on the set and throw his ego around.
Right, right.
You know?
Right.
I need them to be sort of almost invisible. Because the relationship is between me and that person in front.
Right.
But that's not to say I don't want to hear their ideas.
Right, right, right.
I mean, and let them do their job the way they do it.
I had the pleasure of seeing the Sarafina play in New York, and I can imagine for them as well.
Yep.
It was important for you to welcome them.
Yes.
And for them to feel welcomed and feel comfortable. And I think that also makes them, you know, do their job much better, you know, and make them express themselves so much better.
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep. Yep. I think interviewing somebody is a real art. And so I know that you're interviewing me, and so I'm going out here on dangerous ground. But I've really developed a bunch of techniques that I think really are important.
I am open, and it's funny, I was gonna say, I'm seriously, I was going to say that to you, because even my opening, I got a little nervous, and I'm just being open and free today. Generally, what techniques would you give a person like me? I'm open to receive any techniques
Brenda,
to help me.
that's really sweet of you.
And I really mean that. I really mean that. I really do. And I'll take all the criticism, and then we can continue.
No, well, you work in a very different genre than I do.
Okay,
So
explain.
Here I come barreling up in this van and a car to a house, and I've got, you know, 3 guys maybe, and equipment and lights and stuff, and we move into somebody's home.
Oh.
Right? So, and I like to do interviews in people's homes because they're comfortable in their home.
Right, right.
So, but we start moving the furniture, and you know, so we're starting to upset it, and the less we make our presence felt, the better. So what I do is I take the person I'm going to interview away. I talk to the cameraman about, you know, let's shoot it here, and that looks like a nice background. You know what you're doing, you go do that. And so we go talk in the other room or across the room and about the Super Bowl, you know, and when the cameraman's ready, he'll turn around and look at me and say, okay, he's ready. I will then wander back with the person I'm going to interview and say, why don't you sit here, and continue to talk about the Super Bowl. And then at some way, find a connection between the Super Bowl and the subject that I want to get into, and continue to talk. And instead of doing, okay, roll camera,
Yeah.
camera, sound,
Yeah,
oh yeah,
yeah.
it makes everyone go like
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they don't know that they're even being filmed because they're still talking about the Super Bowl, maybe.
You know, it kind of reminds me, this might be a little off, but it's still about relationship. I remember being in college and I had a speech course. And I couldn't understand why this professor was doing this, but he had us doing the weirdest things, sharing our past with people. He told us to bring in stuff that was dear to us, something very funny that we want to share with with the group. I mean, he did all this, but it wasn't until maybe about 2 or 3 classes afterwards, I got it. He's gaining a relationship with all of us. So when we got it to get up to speak, we'd feel more comfortable. So it sounds like kind of the same sort of thing. And then the same with me, before I interview someone, I usually call them on the phone, or we have dinner, or we have
Right.
lunch, or whatever, so I can get to know them if I don't know them ahead of time.
Right.
So that's the same sort of, I guess, idea, which I think is really, to me, it's very important.
Well, but I met you a couple of weeks ago and immediately connected to you.
Yes.
So I knew that this was going to be very comfortable.
Right, and that's why I felt the same way too, because I said, you know what, this will be a good show, because I love the topic, I love your background, and I said this will be a great help to me as well, because I'm new at this. I kind of am, but I enjoy doing it, and I'm always looking for different techniques.
Yeah.
So do you have any more techniques you want to share with us?
Yes. Okay. About interviewing?
Yes, and relationships.
I like to be close enough to the person I'm interviewing, and this drives cameramen mad, of course, to be able to reach out and touch them. I think that's really, I mean, and the other thing that I do that you can't do in a show like this, but when you have to be quiet if you're not on camera, and I'm never on camera. So the person is saying something quite extraordinary, and they get no sound, no response back from the interviewer because they don't want to overlap the sound, right? So I developed a technique of going. I'm constantly making faces, but trying to give them the response visually. And so I look really sad, or really, all the time I'm doing that.
I'm glad you said that. I'm loving this show. I really, really am. Because I usually critique my own self. And I remember from the beginning when I used to, look at myself, and I used to say, oh, as you were as the person was talking. And I said, that's not cool.
No.
Because it override and just interfered. So I used to try to be more conscious of that. And I think I still do it, but I'm less, more conscious of it now. So
Well,
I'm
now
going
you have to be making faces, Brenda, like straight at the camera. Oh.
So what are some of the crazy things that's happened that has you've experienced about not having a good relationship when making a good movie?
I went down to Brazil to make a film called The Charcoal People. It's about migrant workers who cut down trees in the Amazon and make charcoal for our steel industry. The charcoal puts the strength into the steel.
This is in Brazil?
In Brazil. And found out that there was child labor involved, and I went down basically to make a film about child labor. So I'd gone down on a scout. I was going to bring a sound person from this country and pick up a local cameraman, because very important that the cameraman understand what's being said, so can anticipate, so because maybe instead of focusing on you, then you're talking, they might want to be focusing on the person that person's talking to. So only a cameraman who spoke the language would know that. So I come back to the States for about 2 months and then go back down to Brazil to make the film, and discover that The cameraman that I'd hired while I was there on the first trip was now on another job, and I was being given a cameraman that I'd not met. And so I gave him a really tough time for the first few days until we found a way to work together. I ordered him around, which I would never do. And normally, I'd rather the person brought their own talent and vision to the show. But worse than that, when we arrived on location to film with people that we'd set up to film with, they, as migrant workers, had moved on. There was nobody there. And we had driven, you know, well, first of all, to go into the Amazon takes quite a time through muddy roads, and that highway is just a disaster across the Amazon. And then into the middle of the jungle, and there was like, okay, nothing worse than scouting a new show with a crew who are all getting paid with you. So it was fun.
So, what would have been better to do? Was that something you were just trying to catch the people there without letting them know you're going to film them?
No.
I shouldn't have said catch them there, but trying to like.
No, but we'd set up with this particular man that we would be back and we would film him there, and we'd do that, and we'd work in this area.
So why'd they leave?
They left because they're migrant workers and needed to find some more work. Their whole thinking,
I got that.
Whole thinking was to keep moving to find the money.
Right. I got that. I got that.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking, I guess I'm thinking the wrong way. I'm thinking that you know, they knew you were coming.
Yes.
And they knew you were going to film.
Yes.
So they were going to be a part of this. So they were going to wait. But I guess they said, nope, we got to make the money.
That's right. That's exactly why
I got it.
They were cutting down trees and you knew that they were wrong to be doing what they were doing, and they knew they were wrong, and yet they could do nothing else. This was the best job that they could find. And so the film is very much about that. There are no bad guys in the film at all.
Oh, okay.
But you know by the end of the film that the American and Japanese corporations very much who use the charcoal from Brazil are the bad guys. That they're without actually ever meeting them.
Right.
And I made these people into stars purposely. I celebrated their lives as charcoal workers. Horrible work, covered in dust and soot and all the time. I mean, black from that coal dust. And the smoke is amazing. They lived right there in these compounds, right by the fires. They would put the wood into these little mounds of little huts, if you like, made out of mud, and watched the fires. So the wood never caught fire, but was always smoldering, and that turned it into charcoal. And they had to be there, live close by to be able to tend them 24 hours a day. So they were covered in smoke the entire time.
Wow.
And yet the children and the wives, those children were so clean and perfect.
Wow.
Absolutely. And so gracious. We'd go to film in one of the homes, and they would clean off the chairs for us and give us coffee and welcome us, just like, you know.
You know, I'm sitting here thinking, Nigel, film is so powerful because you gave them a voice.
That's actually my job, is to give a voice.
That's what I do. Maybe that's why we're like this.
Maybe so.
Because that's what I do.
Maybe so.
That's what I do. Another thing I want to ask you, is it any techniques you help when you're interviewing to help them speak better, or do you do that, or you don't?
No, they are what they are. In fact, you know, there's really the job of the director is very little to do. You know, I mean, it's like you've got a cameraman who really knows how to shoot, sound person who gets perfect sound, and interviewing is about the only thing where a good documentary director gets really involved. And for me, it was always a big performance. I mean, I would sweat my way into those interviews just as much as the other person I was hoping was not sweating. But for me, it would be really important. Just like you said, I had to focus myself down before the interview and get really in there. Even though I was talking about the ball game, I'm really... So that, to me, is really exciting. Now, when you're filming them doing stuff, what can I do? There's not much I can do, except occasionally ask them a question. I always liked interviewing people when they were doing things.
Do you, as an interviewer, is it a technique of questions that you target more so, or is it a way that you get people to talk? You know what I'm saying?
I listen. That's what it's all about, is listening and and the other person knows they're being heard. Yeah, I think so. I think and it's not and it's not looking down at the questions, you know.
Right.
So I will have a bunch of 3x5 cards with all the question and a question, a question, and a question, and I may look at the first three and then forget about the others.
So someone said to me one time, Brenda, you really shouldn't have paper. You should really have more cards. As you can see on this interview, I'm real open today.
I may charge you.
I'm really... And, you know, when I first started, I did have cards.
Yeah.
And I ran out of them, and I have not been back to the store to get cards, which is just ridiculous.
Another technique.
Okay.
Right? You have all one question a card, right? And as he's answered that question, you put it on the bottom. Answer that. Where's my language? If he doesn't speak the answer that you wanted, then you turn the card over, upside down, the other way, right? So that at the end, when you get to the end of your card, you turn the thing over, and there are all the questions that you didn't get the answers to.
I love it. I do. You know, and like I said, I enjoy what I'm doing. I really enjoy what I'm doing. And believe it or not, people still don't want to believe this, but I was painfully shy when I was growing up. I mean, I know. When I say this to people, they give me that look, Nigel. But I really, really, really was. But I just grew out of it, and I just would, I've heard somebody say, do it afraid. But I enjoy people. I love people. And I'm kind of liking this thing, you know, but I want to perfect it. And so that was another reason I said, when I get Nigel on my show, and I really appreciate and I'm sure as people in the audience that are watching, they could take some pointers as well, you know. So we have like 3-4 minutes left. Tell us, what are you working on now?
I'm trying to make a film about a singer called Eva Cassidy, who died in 1996. At the age of 33, and she's just sat in her backyard and played her guitar down in Annapolis and sang beautifully to herself. And once a man heard her and recorded her, put her in a recording, and they did quite a few songs. And 5 years after she died, she had 3 records in the top 50 in England. They went platinum. Her records were amazing. She has a friend of mine sent me some. I was preparing to go on a shoot, and he sent me these songs on files, and I listened to one of them. I said, I've never heard of this woman, Eva Cassidy, what she sounded like. I stopped everything that I was doing to listen to this American singer who is unknown in this country. And I think she should be known. Eva Cassidy, really, get her records.
So we could go online.
Quite beautiful.
We can go online and maybe listen?
Oh yeah, they're there.
Eva
Cassidy.
Cassidy.
Yeah. She's extraordinary singer.
What kind of music? What kind of
She
music?
sang everything. That was why nobody knows of her in this country, because she would not be fit into a genre. So she sang gospel, she sang country, she sang rock and roll, she sang the blues, and did them all brilliantly. But the record companies wanted to say, okay, you're only going to sing blues and you're going to dress like this. And she said, forget it. I mean, she would show up at concerts, at performances, because she performed in Washington quite often, and she'd come in the same clothes that she was wearing while she was working at the Garden Center. You know, she was not prepared to do things the way the industry wanted.
I love it.
But extraordinary.
And that's so sad, because you hear so much of that, you know, actors or singers get known, and then they put them in this box.
That's right.
And, you know, and then they get trapped, because if they want to have work and they want to have money,
Yep.
they get trapped in that.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's exactly the kind of statement I want to make. I mean, I'm really a social worker who happens to make
I
movies.
was too.
I know that.
Wow, Nigel. So what are you going to, what are other things that you think that we could do to help people have a voice? I think the arts are just...
I think documentary film is really a major tool. And I would like to teach people about documentary filmmaking, because I think that by now, I think I know a little bit about how to do it. You know, and I would like to pass that on to people when I get to a point where I can't do it anymore.
Well, I might be your first student.
I want to tell you about one other film. Can I? Do I have time?
30 seconds,
You got
yes.
30 seconds?
Yes.
I was down in Texas at a film festival. I heard about a teacher in a small border town on the Mexican border whose students were winning the science competitions, the mathematics, the engineering competitions in Texas every year for the last 5 years. And how was this teacher doing it? With rocketry. She was teaching them rocketry. And now they're like 17th in the national rocketry competitions and moving up. And their first try, they were 17th. And this is a wonderful film about how important this kind of technique of teaching can be. Not just rocketry, but this kind of enthusiasm, this kind of passion to teach people.
Yes, yes.
To teach kids.
Teaching education out of the box.
Yeah.
Out of the box.
Exactly.
Right.
In fact, I think she used that expression.
Wonderful. This has been wonderful, Nigel. We're gonna talk some more. This has been Brenda, Voices of Wisdom. You have a wonderful day.